Okay, this is the Unit 2 review packet, topic 6C. So this is simplifying radicals. So there's different ways to do this. I like to do prime factor trees. So prime factor trees means I'm going down to prime numbers, which are numbers only divisible by 1 in themselves. Now, when I see this negative, that means I could turn this into I times the square root of 72, because remember that I is the square root of -1. So this right here is basically saying that I have the square root of -1 times the square root of positive 72. So the square root of -1 is I. That's where that I came from, and I still have this to deal with. So it's an even number, which means I can definitely divide it by 2. So I have 2 and 36, and now I'm crossing out the 72 because that's what 2 times 36 is. It's 72. 36 is another even number, so I know I can divide by 2. I've got 2 and 18, cross out the 36. 18 is 2 times 9, cross out the 18, and 9 is 3 times 3. I have a pair of 2's and a pair of 3's, and I have this poor lonely leftover 2. So it's Friday night. If you have a date, you get to go out. If you don't have a date, you stay home. So these guys get to go out, this guy's staying home. And when you go on a date, you just take one car. So when these 2's come out, it's just coming out as 1, 2. When these 3's come out, it's just a 3. I already had an I out there, and this poor 2 has to stay home. He doesn't have a date. Then I multiply anything on the outside together, so 2 times 3 is 6. And if I had something else on the inside, I could multiply that as well, but I would never multiply what's outside times what's inside. I can do a quick check if I want and do the square root of 72 and then 6 times the square root of 2. So the square root of 72 is my original thing. 6 times the square root of 2 is what I simplified it to be, and you can see that my decimals are exactly the same. So I know that I did it right. So that just takes a couple seconds, and it's a quick and easy check. I would definitely take the time to do that check, just to make sure. All right, so now number 32. The problem with number 32 is that I have a radical on the bottom. So we are not allowed to have radicals in the denominator. So the way to get rid of this is to multiply the top and bottom by that radical on the bottom. Because what this is doing is just multiplying it by 1. Square root of 5 over square root of 5 is 1, just like 5 divided by 5 is 1, or 10 divided by 10 is 1. So I'm not changing my fraction. Now, that's an outside, that's an inside. So this is not the square root of 15, it's not 15, it's just 3 times the square root of 5. We can't go from outside to inside and multiply together. And this square root of 5 times square root of 5 is just 5. I check, there's nothing else I can simplify, and that is my final answer. Oh, and you know what I forgot to do? I forgot my pluses or minuses. So I need a plus or minus on number 31. And then plus or minus. I'm going to write your pluses and minuses before you start so you don't forget them, because they are really easy to forget. All right, number 33. I have 3 terms. Terms are things that are separated by plus or minus. So I have 1, 2, 3 terms. If I'm going to simplify anything here, I would need to simplify between all 3. I can't just turn 6/8 into 3/4, because if I'm going to divide this by 2 and this by 2, I have to divide this term by 2. And right now, that's an inside. I can't divide an inside thing by 2. 2 is an outside number. So let's see if I can simplify the square root of 48. It's an even number, so I know we can divide it by 2. 24 is also even, can be divided by 2. 12 is also even. 6 is even. So I've got 2 groups of 2 and this poor leftover 3. I often like to highlight my leftovers so I remember who's left over. So this is saying that the square root of 48 is the same thing as 2 times the square root of 3, or 4 times the square root of 3. So I'm going to rewrite this now as 6 plus or minus 4 times the square root of 3 over 8. And now when I look at my terms, right, I might be able to do some simplifying. I have 6, 4, and 8. Those are my 3 terms. 6, 4 times the square root of 3, and 8. They're all even numbers. I can definitely divide them all by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Divided by 2 is 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And that is my final answer. So this is all one term. 4 times the square root of 3 is one term. It is not two terms, right? Terms are separated by pluses and minuses. So when I divide, I'm just dividing this. I'm not dividing what's in there. 4 times the square root of 3 divided by 2 is 2 times the square root of 3. All right, last one. 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 24. So again, I could turn this immediately into this. I times the square root of positive 24. And then let's see if I can factor 24 and reduce this anymore. So 24 with a factor tree is 2 and 12. 12 is 2 and 6, and 6 is 2 and 3. So I have one group of 2's, one pair of 2's, and a leftover 2 and a leftover 3. So this is saying this is 3 plus or minus. The 2's can come out. The I is already out there. And inside I still have a 2 times a 3. Or 3 plus or minus 2i times the square root of 6. And that is my answer on that one. So again, on these, don't forget your pluses or minuses. The pluses and minuses for 33 and 34 are already included. So if you notice, there's already a plus or minus. It's right here. That's why I didn't have to do additional ones here. The problem already had the plus or minus in it. But if it doesn't have a plus or minus, don't forget to put your plus or minuses in. Anytime you have a negative inside the square root sign, that means you're going to turn it positive and put an I outside. And don't ever cross things that are outside with what's inside. You can't multiply 6 times 2 or I times 2. Outside times outside, inside times inside, they don't mix.